Okay. Continue. Hello and welcome to Manchester and the Abenaki, presented by the Manchester Historic Association. My name is Kathy Arnold and I am a volunteer with AARP New Hampshire. Please note that today's presentation is being recorded. At AARP, we have been promoting the health and well-being of older Americans for over 60 years. As the pandemic continues, AARP is serving as a wise friend and fierce defender by providing important information, advocacy, and resources to older adults, their families, friends, and communities. Additionally, we are striving to bring you informative, innovative, and engaging events, like today's program, as a means of connection and inclusion. Before we get started, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. To eliminate background noise, please be sure to mute your microphone. You are on mute if your microphone has a line through it. You are welcome to appear on or off camera, but again, we are recording today's presentation. So if you don't want your video camera on, just click on the video camera icon to be sure it has a line through it. We'd love to hear from you today though, so please use the chat box, which can be accessed by clicking the chat button, and type your questions or comments where it says type message here. My fellow volunteer Bev will be monitoring the chat and raising your questions and comments throughout the program. Finally, we'd encourage you to rename yourself so we recognize you in the chat. To do this, move your cursor into the upper right corner of your own image and click on the 3 dots and click rename. Using just your first name is fine. So let's welcome today's presenter. As a Manchester native, Christy has her dream job and the exciting task of sharing her passion for the history of her hometown with fourth graders across the state. Upon graduating from Central High School, Christy studied education at Notre Dame College and received her fine art degree from Gibbs College of Art in Boston. She's a former public school teacher and artist by trade. These skills culminated in the unique position that she holds at the Manchester Historic Association. When Christy is not leading school groups, you can find her hosting American Girl tea parties, curating exhibits, and designing artwork for various marketing needs of the museum. Christy enjoys painting, camping, hiking, boating, and traveling with her family. She drag her husband, Cale, and their 2 daughters, Regan and Samantha, to every battlefield in the continental United States. She is just as at home by a campfire as she is in an art museum. So Christy, over to you.
Thank you so much and good morning. Thank you for your patience and thank you for joining us today. And without further ado, we're just going to jump into our presentation of Manchester and the Abenaki. So we can go ahead to the next slide. Perfect. There we go. All right. So people have been settling along the banks of the Merrimack River in this region that we call Manchester for nearly 11,000 years. Next. Among the first inhabitants were the Abenaki. Next. The Abenaki were part of the Algonquin language group and the Penacook Tribe. Some of the other groups in that tribe were the Abenaki and the Wabanaki as well. Next slide. They were drawn here to this spot on the Merrimack because of the Amoskeag Falls. This picture is from about the 1900s, 1910. This is obviously not the view that the Abenaki would have had, but the needs of the river have changed over the last 1,000 years. So we've seen many different stages of this dam. Next. Amoskeag is an Abenaki word for place of many fish, simply because it was an excellent fishing spot for the natives. Groups of anadromous fish take their yearly pilgrimage to the Atlantic Ocean to the White Mountains via these Amoskeag Falls. These fish include salmon, shad, alewife, and lamprey. Next. As the north swimming fish rest beneath the pools of the falls, the Abenaki set up nets or weirs at the base. As they stand on the bluff overlooking the Merrimack, these skilled fishermen can hook the nets, simultaneously dredging up many, many fish. Next. Although the Native Americans fished for many types of fish, lamprey was a staple in the Abenaki diet. The lamprey were used as a primary food source. They were salted and preserved for the long winters. They were ground up and used as baby food, and they were even dehydrated and used as fertilizer for growing crops. It's a very special thing that happened at these Amoskeag Falls. The Amoskeag Falls, when completely untamed, are a 54-foot drop in the river. So this was really a unique sort of ecosystem and a really good place for the Abenaki to set up encampment. Next slide. The constant food supply provided by the Amoskeag Falls resulted in the Native Americans becoming less nomadic and establishing permanent villages here in the Manchester area. And that is exactly what they did right in that area where the Amoskeag Falls were. Present day, that's like the Brady Sullivan Tower, the Amoskeag Rotary. That was really a sacred place for them. Next slide. Chief Passaconaway was the leader of the multi-tribal nation of the Penacook people. He lived between the 15 and 1600s. We don't really have any concrete evidence of exactly when he was born or when he died. The only real paper evidence that we have are some journals from English missionaries that mention meeting him. So it's kind of a guess. We guess he lived to about 114 years old, as best we can tell. He was called the Great Sagamore because of his steadfast manner and unrivaled leadership. Also, he was an unusually large man, so that kind of contributes to that nickname. He was a peacekeeper and protected his people from the Mohawk tribe. He was the tribal shaman and later converted to Christianity after meeting Reverend John Eliot. Passaconaway was unique because he had a lot of pride in being part of the Abenaki, but he also was really interested in integrating into the life of the settlers and to living harmoniously with them, which was not always the case with the Native Americans and the new settlers. So Passaconaway is said to have possessed magical powers that could make water burn, make dead vegetation alive again, and even animals return to life. Passaconaway is attributed to creating the Bear Peak, the old horn of Mount Chikora. And one of the legends that surrounds Passaconaway is sort of mystical. Abenaki really made legends to pass down from generation to generation so that they could remember important dates or explain things they couldn't explain. In this case, they really wanted to honor Chief Passaconaway and make sure that nobody forgot him. So Anglo-American legend about Passaconaway's death say that his body was buried in a cave in the sacred mountain, I'm gonna butcher this, Agamenticus in southern Maine, and that at least one member of his people saw his spirit carried up to the Great Spirit's earthly abode of Mount Washington, atop a sled pulled by wolves, where he burst into flames and became part of the heavens. We actually have research that indicates that he is buried in one of the islands on the Merrimack River, just south of the Amoskeag Falls. But depending on the region that you were from, the tribe that you were from, the legend of Passaconaway morphed into all kinds of different things. The one common denominator is that he was standing on frozen Lake Winnipesaukee. Thank you.
Christy, you're on mute.
King Gamangas, who passed on his tribe to his son Wanalancet, and he had done a good job and he was done. So a team of 6 white wolves came and swept him into a sled, drove him to the top of Mount Washington, where he burst into flames and became part of the stars. So it's a very nice way to honor Chief Passaconaway. So besides legends and folklore, one way that we are really able to decipher how the Abenaki lived are from archaeological digs. So the Neville site, following the slope that goes down the river beneath the Amoskeag Bridge.
Christy, we lost you. Sorry, folks, we seem to be having some technical difficulty. Let's give Christy just a minute to get back here with us. All right, folks, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a moment. Feel free to chat amongst yourself. I'm going to try calling the museum and see if we can get Christy back.
All right. Sorry about that. The museum's internet just completely shut off and kicked me off. All right. Perfect. All right. So we were talking about archaeological digs. So there were several significant archaeological digs in Manchester's not so distant past. And one of them being the Neville and the Smith dig. The Neville site, following the slope that goes down the river beneath the Amoskeag Bridge, was inhabited for at least 8,000 years, possibly longer. The Smith site, named for New Hampshire Governor Frederick Smith, occupied the location of today's Brady Sullivan building. John Clayton loves to say they literally paved paradise to put up a parking lot. This was a beautiful overlooking bluff of the Amoskeag Falls. It housed Governor Frederick Smith's mansion, the Willows, and they demolished it in order to make the parking lot for Brady Sullivan Tower. So it's a little bit tragic, except that we got to find what they uncovered. This area was an important area of the Abenaki village. It remained largely untouched until the construction of the Amoskeag Bridge in the 1970s revealed a wealth of Native American history, including the remains of several Abenaki. Next slide. The two Manchester digs produced thousands of artifacts, including stone tools, arrowheads, pottery, and beads. It was so interesting because when they were clearing and excavating, they found the remains of several Native Americans. So they stopped what they were doing. And for the next 2 years, archaeologists came from all over the world. This became one of the most significant archaeological digs in North American history. It really gave archaeologists and scientists a good insight into not only how the Abenaki people lived, but also how they evolved. Through taking soil samples, they got to see how the organic matter in the soil changed. They got to see what elements were broken down. They got to see exactly when they switched to using some metal tools, which means that that's an early indicator of missionaries and European explorers coming over. They got to see how their pottery and their artwork sort of was elevated and evolved over time. And the Manchester Historic Association has about 100,000 pieces in our archaeological collection, housed over at our research center. So this was really, really significant, a really significant find for them. Next slide. So present day, the Abenaki have definitely left an impact on Manchester. You can see it in the names of the streets. We still use the Amoskeag word. That is a very Manchester specific word. But the Abenaki population has seriously diminished. So due to the devastation of the French and Indian War, the population of the Abenaki in the Manchester area was significantly decreased. Many tribes fled to land further north, sometimes as far as Canada. And there are actually 2 reservations in Canada present day. Some of the Abenaki people integrated into the communities they lived in. There is a lot of Abenaki ancestry still in Manchester. And today, Abenaki people live on 2 reservations in Quebec and scattered around New England. The Abenaki in the United States do not have an official reservation. There is still a very active Abenaki population up near the Kearsarge area. There's a Kearsarge Indian Museum, which really highlights the beautiful history of the Abenaki people. It sheds a light on some of the legends and the ceremonies. And there is still an active practicing tribe up in that area. So now I will leave it up to some questions. That was a lot of information. I don't pretend to be an expert on the Abenaki, but I can probably answer several questions or find someone who can. Is the Micmac, oh, I couldn't read that quick enough. Do we know what the question was?
Yes, looks like the question is the Micmac tribe part of the Abenaki Nation?
They're part of the Penacook Nation, which is the overlying, the Abenaki were part of the Penacook people, as were the Micmac.
And was the Neville site named after someone?
Yes, the Neville site was named after I believe it was named after the area, not somebody, a place. It was named after the area in which it was excavated, which is now what we call the Coca-Cola Curve in Manchester.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so that was a section of land that was called the Neville.
Yes, I believe it was actually owned by the Nevilles.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
great. And the Abenaki, are they recognized by the government as a tribe?
So I am not 100% sure. I have heard both ways, but I believe that they are not, which is why they have not been officially given land. They are a recognized tribe in Canada, but I am not 100% sure, but my answer is I don't believe they are.
So the United States government is not recognizing
Does
them.
not recognize them, yes.
And let's see, I have a comment here in
Oh,
the chat.
Oh,
that
that's
said,
good.
John
I
Neville
heard-
was the owner who received the site from the Stark family.
Okay, so yep, it was the owner of the land. That makes sense. Because that area of Manchester was called Nevilleville at one point. So I think that's where the name comes from.
Okay, right, because Manchester was a series of little villages, am I correct?
Yeah, Janesville, the Piscataquag. Yeah.
Right. So Kathy wants to know, did the digging of the remains require permission?
So they, I don't think they knew that the remains were there. Once they discovered them, there is a whole series of things that you have to do, including opening the dig up to archaeologists. And the remains were actually housed at the Manchester Historic Association for quite a long time. The leadership of the organization sought a way to properly bury them. So they have been repatriated. I'm not exactly sure where, but they've been repatriated under the guidance of the Abenaki tribe.
Great. Okay, Dare wants to know is, excuse me, let me move this up here. Do the Abenaki have a language like some of the Massachusetts tribes? And are
Yes,
many of the,
Algonquin.
oh, they call it the Algonquin?
Yep, they speak Algonquin.
Okay. And also she wants to know if, hold on a second. Everybody, I got a lot of things in the chat at the same time. Okay. Yes, and so, and then are many native names of things like from New Hampshire coming from the Abenaki?
Yes. Yep. Kangamangas, Passaconaway, Amoskeag. There's so many, so many.
We have a question about when they ran away to Canada. Were they run away? I mean, did they do that by themselves? Were they killed in the war, or did they die of a white man's disease? And
All of the above.
all of it. Okay. So
Yeah.
have
So
any of, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, go ahead. Yes, please finish. Sorry.
Oh, no, some must have stayed. And if they did stay, how were they treated by the settlers?
Yes, a lot of them did stay and integrate. We don't have a lot of record of how they were treated, except that I know that many of them married into, families of white settlers. There is still a population of Abenaki ancestry here in Manchester, but I don't have any indication of if they were treated differently. Passaconaway did convert to Christianity, and I'm under the impression that he was welcomed into that community, but I'm not entirely sure.
Okay, so I have a comment from Paul and Denise. It says, and I hope I pronounce this correctly, the Kawasak band of the Penacook Abenaki people are still alive and headquartered in Alton, New Hampshire. They say that if you have any questions about us as a living people, to please contact them at kawasak@tds.net. And there is also an educational website at indigenousnewhampshire.com.
Yes, that is a great resource.
Okay, so then I have the artifacts that are at the museum. Are they on display?
We have a small collection of them on display, and then the rest of them
I'm gonna be
are
finishing in just a few minutes.
archivally cataloged at the museum. We do have a display of arrowheads, stone tools, pottery, a canoe, some early fishing equipment on display in the museum daily, but there are thousands that are cataloged. The collection is split up across New England, with us having the biggest chunk.
Great.
Yeah. And like I said, I know what the museum has presented, and I know the research I've done personally. But that website that the audience member gave is a great tool that can answer more involved questions than I can.
Great. Thank you, Christy.
Yeah, sorry about the technical difficulties. What a crazy morning.
So I don't see any more questions in the chat.
All right, does anyone have any more?
I guess not.
No, it looks like
We're all good.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for having me. And my goal was to educate and respectfully tell the story of the Abenaki in Manchester. So I hope that was accomplished. The museum is open Tuesday through Saturday, 10 to 4. I would love to have you come look at what we have and explore some more of Manchester's history. And these mini tours have been really wonderful, and it was a great opportunity to reach out. So.
Well, thank you, Christy, for sharing your time and expertise with all of us today. I was particularly fascinated by the archaeological digs and would love to see some of the stuff that they dug up.
Yeah, it's really neat. It's a really cool thing. And it was unfortunate at the time that they did it, but it really kind of shed a light on an area of people we didn't know that much about.
Yeah. Kind of makes you sad that that sacred place was dug up and made into a park.
Absolutely.
His
It's
life.
a travesty. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and thank you to our audience for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Christy and that you enjoyed the program. And of course, be sure to check the AARP New Hampshire website, aarp.org/nh, often for more virtual programs coming soon, including gentle yoga, which is next Wednesday, live cooking demonstrations, paint parties, and more. Be well, everybody, and take care.
Have a good day.